WWE Crown Jewel 2021 is in the books from Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. The first event in Saudi Arabia since 2020. This show was the longest pay-per-view we've had in quite some time. It actually went over the 4-hour mark. Even though the show was longer, it still kind of felt like a run-of-the-mill pay-per-view. Yes, it was in front of a bigger crowd, and yes, there were some aesthetic differences, like of course the women had to dress up and cover most of their body and whatnot, but overall, it really didn't feel that much different from a lot of the other shows we've had the company put on throughout the years. Structurally, I mean, it was somewhat what we expected. I actually thought that Edge versus Seth Rollins Hell in a Cell would close the show, but it actually opened the show, and it was a pretty good little match. I mean, Edge and Seth Rollins do tell a great story in the ring. The feud itself has been whatever, but the matches they've had have been killer. The Hell in a Cell match to me is probably the second best one they've had. The best one would have to be the SummerSlam match. That one blew it out of the water. The SmackDown match from Madison Square Garden was good, but to me, this was the second best match. You know, they had the Hell in a Cell gimmick, and we saw all kinds of interesting, unique stuff. Like, for example, in one part of the match, Seth Rollins wrapped a chain around his foot and goes for like the super kicks and went for a curb stomp, but Edge ends up, dodging it and hitting Edge, putting the chair into into Seth's balls for a low blow. Stuff like that was really creative. There was a sunset bomb from the top of a ladder through a table, a couple of table spots here and there, stuff that we've kind of seen before, but it was a worthwhile blow off to the feud, which I think it's the blow-off. I mean, I don't think it's over. They called it a trilogy, so I think this is the end here. Edge ends up winning the match when basically he was going to do Edge was trying to submit Seth Rollins, but instead what happened was he did the curb stomp and beat Seth Rollins with his own move. So I thought that was pretty creative. And I think the feud is over, but they both got drafted to Raw, so now I don't even know. But who knows? I doubt it. Mansoor and Mustafa Ali, this was actually a pretty good match. Both of these guys never get enough of a push. They're obviously going to be on this show because it's in Saudi Arabia, and Mansoor's a big Saudi Arabian wrestler. Mansoor won the match with a springboard neckbreaker, which looked good. And then Tarek Hamdi, the Olympic Taekwondo guy, showed up and pretty much knocked out Ali. So that was something for the Saudi Arabian crowd more than for us at home. RK Bro versus AJ Styles and Omos. Every time that AJ was in there with either Randy Orton or with Riddle, it was good. But besides that, I mean, once again, Omos does not do much, but that is his role. But they kind of kept him out of the match. It was pretty cool how in the finish, Orton won the RKO. Won with the RKO. But then what happened was after he hit the RKO, Riddle hit the floating bro from the top rope. So that, it was a pretty decent tag match. The thing about this show is there really weren't any actual, horrible matches. I would say the weakest match was probably Zelina Vega against Doudrop for the Queen's Cup tournament or whatever, the Queen's Crown. That was just whatever. I don't understand why they're pushing Zelina Vega. I don't get it. She's kind of been just randomly there having matches on SmackDown. I just don't know. I don't really care, honestly. It seemed like a waste of time. Now, what I thought was going to be a horrible, horrible, horrible match was Goldberg and Bobby Lashley, and it actually wound up being better than I was expecting. Wasn't great by any means, but it was a lot better. They did some pretty brutal stuff. Lashley opened up early. They had a spot where the Hurt Business came out with kendo sticks, and Goldberg took him out with a backdrop. I don't know since when is that a deadly move. And then Goldberg and Lashley go at it with the kendo stick, and then Goldberg spears him off the stage into, this table platform, which it was obviously pre-rigged there. And Goldberg got the win. Goldberg probably shouldn't be winning any matches at this point in his career, but Goldberg was one of the guys that the Saudi Arabians really wanted, and he's a legend to them. And he is a legend overall, so I get why they did it, but just wasn't that good. Xavier Woods and Finn Balor for the King of the Ring final. I was surprised, but not really. There had been talk that one of the issues they're running into now, we're going to go a little bit on the inside here, folks. So one of the rumors is that they're trying to set up challenges for Roman Reigns. Now, I can't see Xavier Woods being a credible challenger to Roman Reigns anytime soon. But the plan is that they were going to go with The Rock and Roman Reigns at WrestleMania this year. But now the rumor is that Roman Reigns will not wrestle The Rock at WrestleMania for Texas in 2022. And then instead he's going to wrestle in 2023 in Hollywood. But The Rock wanted to do it for 28, not 29. I'm sorry, 38, not 39. So it's a very weird story because it's very rare for WWE to tell somebody on the level of The Rock, yeah, you know what, we'll do it the way we want to do it, not the way you want to do it when it's The Rock. I mean, he's only getting bigger and bigger in Hollywood. That's what has been talked about now. So I heard actually earlier today that Woods could win this match, because Finn Balor just went through a Roman Reigns feud last month. And he did. He won the match. It kind of made him a star, but not really. I mean, it was... I think the problem with the New Day is that they had a great story for Kofi and one for Big E. I think Xavier Woods has to have a different story because these guys are goofballs and they're a comedy act, but they can work and they are popular and they can be credible. It's just that I feel like it'll take a bit more time. And they have time. I mean, they have time with Woods. So, same thing with the next match. Big E and Drew McIntyre. Big E won the match, and it was an interesting situation because I remember thinking, okay, do they really want to have Drew McIntyre lose? But Drew McIntyre will be wrestling Roman Reigns after Survivor Series, probably going into the Royal Rumble. And they have plenty of time to rebuild to rebuild Drew McIntyre because... if Drew's going to challenge Roman Reigns for the title at Royal Rumble, him losing here is not going to hurt him too much because he's losing to Big E, who is the champion. And Big E needs the win more than Drew. He really does. And if they're going to go with a Drew-Roman feud, they can't do that if Drew's on Raw with the championship. They can't have a real feud. So this all made sense. I don't think it's going to really hurt Drew too much in not winning, but it actually helps Big E because it's a credible victory against top babyface. So, that was interesting. And it made sense. It was okay. Like I said, none of the matches here were terrible, and it wasn't the worst Saudi show. I guess work rate wise, it may have been one of the better shows, but I don't want to say it was a good show because a lot of it did feel like it wasn't really must-see, Becky Lynch versus Sasha Banks versus Bianca Belair for the SmackDown Women's title. Now, I was certain that they were going to have a title change here. I really thought that Sasha was going to take that title. But Becky won. And again, I want to note that I also heard this morning that they want to figure out a way to have Becky Lynch be on both shows. And I think that they will figure that out. And I think this is a step in the right direction to doing that. I think at some point Becky will unify the titles, maybe a Survivor Series, even though those matches are usually not unification matches, the champion versus champion matches. They may end up being that way this year for the women's titles, and then have Becky be on both shows. That's something that was discussed. And, I didn't think Becky was really as over as she used to be when she came back, but it was surprising, but also unsurprising. The match was good, though. The way it was laid out, we saw some pretty good stuff here. I still would have preferred a one-on-one. I still think that Becky and Sasha on SmackDown was probably a little bit better, but it's just interesting because as of right now, the Raw Women's Champion is on SmackDown, and the SmackDown Women's Champion is on Raw, and it's like backwards. It's and usually what they do is they have them switch belts, but they're not doing that this time apparently. So that's, I don't know how they get out of it. I mean, they have to have a plan. They have to have figured this out already by now. They had to have. Roman Reigns and Brock Lesnar. So it's what you would expect. this was not their best match, and it was not their worst match. I think their worst match of all time was probably the SummerSlam match where Roman won the title. And their best match was easily WrestleMania 31. That was a great match. This was somewhere in the middle. I'd put it closer to being one of their weaker matches. There was some stiff stuff here. It didn't go too long. It went about, I want to say like 13, 14 minutes. I don't actually have the times here, but it felt like that because the match started around what? Around 3:45, something like that. The finish I thought was incredibly weak. Very, very weak. There's an F5 that goes to a ref bump because Roman's legs kicked Charles Robinson out. Knocked him out. And then the Usos come in and they brawl or whatever, if I remember correctly. Then Roman hits Lesnar with a belt shot and wins like that. Now, the reason as to why that was a weak finish is because in the past, they have built up Lesnar as being unbeatable. They built him up to where Roman can hit this guy with 4 or 5 spears in a row and he'll just keep coming back. Cena can hit him with multiple F5. I think it was 4 in a row and he'll keep coming back. You're telling me that one belt shot to the head, one belt shot to the head is what took him out? Didn't Lesnar have to beat Roman with 7 F5s at WrestleMania 34? Why is it one belt shot to the head and he's out? They have to think about the past here and about the history between the two. And they can't just ignore their history when it's all on Peacock. Any fan can go back and watch the feud on Peacock. And if you're a new fan and you want to go back and watch the feud, you're going to see that their previous matches were way more brutal and they were both really hard to beat. A belt shot, it's like something out of the 70s. And there's nothing wrong with having 70s finishes, but very weak. Very, very weak. The Lesnar feud with Roman Reigns is probably not over because if Rock really is out of the match with Roman at WrestleMania, then that means that Lesnar's probably in if they decide to go in that direction. I don't know if they will, but WWE kind of did telegraph the finish here because we know that Brock's not going to be around till the Royal Rumble right around that time. So doing this is going to just ensure us that we're going to say, oh, Roman's going to win, and he did. So really, this was a forgettable show. Not a bad show. If you watch it, you're going to have some matches you'll enjoy. And if you have to see something from this show, check out the Hell in a Cell. But besides that, pretty forgettable show. The 3-way match was with the women was okay. There was a few other things here and there. Mansoor and Ali was all right. But just a show. Not really newsworthy. Not anything that was totally extraordinary. Not terrible. Like I said, not as bad as some of the other Saudi shows, but definitely better than... It could have been a lot worse, yo. I thought Goldberg and Lashley were to stink up the joint, and it wound up being okay. That's it. Thanks for watching. I'll talk to y'all in the next video.